Okay, we're back, part two. Hopefully I'll remember to cut that shit out where I went, what the fuck am I not? I can't tell you the number of times I've done videos and I've talked for 15, 20 minutes. I look down there and somehow I accidentally hit my my editor and my screen recorder button and it was stopped. And I have to go back and redo it. And I'm just like, crap. So sorry about that if I forget to take it out, but hopefully I remember. All right, so we're back here. I'm going to move it back just a little bit to make sure we're where we're supposed to be.
Gun whenever possible.
So, if industry standards says he's supposed to do that, it's the burden of proof is on him to show the proof. Show me the policy. Show me where the industry. Show me something documented. To me, Hollywood doesn't seem like they're really into documenting shit. They run everything fast and loose, and they don't give a shit. They kind of, because they got money, they can buy their way out. They buy the cops. They're allowed to do what they want on these film sets. They can violate the law. They'll shut down roads. They can speed on the roads. They can have wrecks on the roads. They're allowed to violate just about all rules on everything. And because of that, you set up a fast and loose, dangerous situation where people don't give a shit, which this is a case in point.
It was unnecessary for Mr. Baldwin to use a revolver for the lineup.
Okay, it may have been unnecessary, but was it wrong? He may have not needed to, but did he violate some? Is there somewhere that says you never do a real gun in a lineup? If I can get that in documentation, perfect. I agree with you. But if it says industry standard is normally if a live gun isn't used, you should use a rubber gun. That's a little vague. I mean, it kind of applies, but it's not as clear cut as no one will ever use a real gun during a lineup. That's much better.
Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin, as a producer and lead actor, to accept the revolver directly from or in the presence of the production's armorer.
That's a pretty clear statement. My guess is this is in writing somewhere, because that's a pretty clear statement. Has a producer and lead actor to accept a revolver directly or in the presence of the production armorer. So if that's in writing, and the armor was outside, it's clear, and I think it's already clear. There was multiple people not doing what they're supposed to. This is very clear that he should never accept the gun. This puts more liability. Responsibility equals liability. Liability equals money. This puts more responsibility on Alec.
Mr. Baldwin did not accept the revolver from the armorer. The armorer was not even in the same room.
Now, here, the company response is going to be, we had a problem with this armorer. The other crew quit. She wasn't very responsible. She would hang out at the truck a lot. She didn't want to be inside. We could never find her when we needed her. She would give us these guns and then disappear. She should have stayed with the gun. She shouldn't have allowed people to handle the gun with her not around. It's her gun. She should have stayed there. It's her fault. And this is where the dilemma comes in and the jury. Is it more reasonable that she was getting paid and she didn't do the job? Or is it more reasonable that they didn't want her there because she was incompetent and they told her to get out and they should have fired her and they didn't? Again, the scale is constantly tipping in who's at fault more and who's more liable and responsible.
Mr. Baldwin allowed Mr. Halls, the first assistant director, to confirm for him the deadly weapon was safe.
So now we're not using gun, we're using deadly weapon. Words matter when you're explaining things. It matters to the jury, it matters to the press, it matters to lay people. He's using the term deadly weapon. We're using gun, firearm, whatever. They're all the same. A gun, firearms, deadly weapon. I mean, a hammer can be a deadly weapon. You're not going to see a bunch of people saying, he handed him a hammer, the deadly weapon. Now, if he used the hammer to kill him, then it becomes a deadly weapon used in a murder. Now, you can refer to hammer as a deadly weapon. But would you refer to all hammers as a deadly weapon? No. Would you refer to all guns as a deadly weapon because they can kill, because somebody's on a shooting team, or because they're at the media and the government has labeled guns dangerous, and they're always dangerous weapons. But cars kill people, hammers kill people, knives kill people, doctors kill people. None of them are routinely called deadly weapons, even though they probably kill more than guns.
Mr. Halls was not qualified in weapons safety.
How do we know that? How do we know he's not qualified? He's an assistant director. How do we know that he didn't get with the armorer and go, hey, you're not around a lot. I know you got double duties. Give me a safety class on this. How do we know? I guarantee you, Mr. Hall's attorney will argue he was qualified. He's done this many movies. He's handled a gun this many times. This is standard procedure. When the other crew was here and they were union, he was handing him guns. That hurts their case. But we don't know. We don't have a lot of answers to a lot of these questions.
Mr. Halls did not look at every round in the revolver.
I think that's reasonable, and maybe he said that. But so what? I mean, is it required? First, you say he's not authorized to handle the gun. Now you're trying to hold him to a standard that is for people that are authorized to handle the gun. Which one is it? You can't have both. If he's not qualified, he shouldn't have handled it. How does he know he's supposed to check every round? And if he knows he's supposed to check every round, how can he not be qualified? And I'm not saying that what I'm saying is the letter of the law and right. I'm just trying to get people to understand that's how these things get muddy and complicated. And when you get into court and you have two people arguing about who said what and what they meant and who used the right word and what word meant what word, you get into all this if and buts and coconuts. And then now you have what policy is this policy and what policy overrides. Then you get in who was in charge and who wasn't in charge and is he authorized and he's not. And who is trained and who isn't trained. When you get all these factors, it's very important for the investigator or for the person making their case to have all the answers. But you got to ask the questions to get the answers.
Cylinder. Industry standards required that Mr. Baldwin personally perform or observe a visual inspection of the revolver to confirm it contained no live rounds.
Again, industry standards. What is he drawing from this industry standards? Where's the document, the policy, the procedure? Can I go interview 50 lead actors and all of them that did gun movies and all of them say, I've checked every gun that was ever handed to me. Everybody does it. That's the way. Now it's clear. That's an industry standard. But if I interview 20 lead actors and 10 go, nah, I've accepted a lot of guns. It's not required. Some do, some don't. It's up to the armor. It's up to the actor. Now it's not an industry standard. So he's throwing this industry standard around loosely. I don't know how he's going to prove that. Maybe he can. I don't know.
Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to be trained and qualified in safe handling and proper firing procedures before accepting the revolver.
Okay, so we're back into industry standard. Let me go back to that little comment there. We're throwing around the industry standard. Be trained and qualified in safe handling. Who thinks that Alec Baldwin's attorney is going to say he's been in 57 movies? He's handled a firearm in 50 of those movies. He's handled a firearm in one movie over 200 times. How can you say he hasn't been trained in safe handling? And out of those 57 movies and all his handling, he has only checked the gun 5 times when the armorer made him check it and would not give it to him. Otherwise, he didn't check it. It was standard for him to not check it. Now he's got cover. Now the liability shifts away from him. And that's what all civil trials are. How can I blame someone else more than my client?
Mr. Baldwin refused weapons training on how to perform a cross draw, the type of gun draw he was about to perform.
This is a problem. If somebody said, we need to give you training on this so the gun doesn't accidentally go off, and when you're cocking a gun, you need to make sure. I mean, if I was training somebody with a gun, and I would tell them about lasering. Lasering is if I have something here, and I move the gun barrel across it, as if it was a laser, it would cut this cup in half. So you don't want to laser anything because you can destroy it. So you don't want to laser a person. When you cross draw, it is damn near impossible not to laser yourself unless you raise your hand and go like this. Most people, when you cross draw, you laser your arm, your hand, your leg, something to get the gun to here. You laser yourself. It's not safe. It's not good. That's why you keep your finger off the trigger. You make sure the hammer's not cocked, etc. So obviously, if you're using a gun for those purposes, you need to know how to cross draw. Was that a problem? Did they try to train him and he said, I don't need to know that? If he did, now he's denying training. Unfortunately, the cross draw did not result in her death. Him not checking the gun, maybe. Him cocking the gun, yes. Him pulling the trigger, yes. The armor not being there, yes. But did the cross draw get somebody killed? No. So why bring this up? Because it shows a common training flaw or a attitude that I don't need training and weapon safety isn't important. That's why this is brought up. It didn't contribute to the death, but it contributed to the overall attitude of the lackadaisical handling of guns. That's why this becomes important.
In the church. The first rule for safety with firearms on a production set required Mr. Baldwin to treat all firearms as if they were loaded and refrain from pointing a firearm at anyone.
Okay, so this statement, but remember, the attorney's wording this. The first rule of safety doesn't say industry standard. See, and I've said that before. As a gun guy, my safe handling gun is totally different. I don't let anybody tell me a gun's safe or uncleared. I check. If I have a gun, I know if it's loaded or not. If I have a gun, I know not to laser somebody because it might go off. I know to keep my finger off. As a gun person, we all know the basic, and those are basic safety terms that everybody handling guns should know. Actors don't handle real guns. They handle prop guns. They handle fake guns. They handle unloaded guns. So their safety procedure is not the same as everyone else. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. Somebody's going to come here, Rick, you're just trying to justify it because you like Alex. I'm not, people. I'm just telling you, from a reasonable standard, when you have an actor using a fake gun and a prop gun, a lot of times, they are going to do things for movie and effect of the movie, for realism, whatever you want to call it. They are going to punt guns at people. They are going to laser people. They are going to hold a gun with it pointing at their arm or at their buddy's head because it's fake and it's plastic and everybody knows it's plastic. But they just do it for the scene. So, and for those that don't understand it, in cop world, when cops use guns, there are constant safety violations, especially when we're stacking up or Congo lining up to make an injury and we get right behind each other. When we go through a door and we're scattering in different directions, people get lasered. If any cop tells you that, I've never been lasered and I've never lasered somebody, well, then you haven't done much shit, okay? I point guns at people all day that are loaded. All day as a cop. Every day. Put your freaking hands up. It's loaded and I've got a gun and a deadly weapon. And I do it every day. For a normal gun safety person, they've probably never pointed a loaded gun at anybody in their life. Okay? There is a difference from the position in which you do on how things are normal or not normal. If I point my gun at somebody and he's got a knife and I'm telling him, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife, and I shoot him, they are not going to say, you should have never pointed that gun at anybody. You know you never pointed a loaded gun at anybody unless you, and that gun pointed at him was a safety hazard and nobody would ever do that. And everybody in the gun world knows you never point a loaded gun at anybody. That's not true. I pointed loaded guns at people all the time. It's normal for cops to point loaded guns at people because it's a different industry. Is it normal for actors to do it? I think in movies it is. It does become normal because they're using fake guns. Is it normal for them to have a loaded gun and point it at somebody? Absolutely not. Again, we have to put things in context when we're either trying to charge them criminally or trying to win a civil case.
From pointing a firearm at anyone. The industry standard required Mr. Baldwin to remember that any person or object at which he points a firearm could be destroyed.
So finally, we have all the players. Where is the assistant director? Where's the guy that handed the gun to him? This video, I'm like, we have a guy that walks up, the assistant director hands him a gun wearing certain clothing, and now I can't find that guy. We're still in the same room. We're in the same act. This video is supposed to portray what happened, and I can't find a guy that handed him the gun. He's nowhere to be found. He's not... Is he behind the... He wouldn't be in the scene, right? He's not in the scene. Why isn't he behind? What happened to the assistant director in this video? I don't get it.
Mr. Baldwin aimed the revolver at his cast and crew within a dangerous distance.
Okay, so if we look here, let me get my mug out of the way here. He is aiming at these 4 people, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where the hell is the assistant director, the guy that handed him the gun? Why isn't the armorer back here? Why isn't the safety people here? Why is this being going on with limited people? Is this a budget issue? Are they doing this because they didn't have budget? Because they don't want to pay all these people? Because they told these people, I don't know. And we'll probably never know.
The cast and crew were only 4 feet away from Mr. Baldwin's weapon. Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to ensure any crew in the line of fire had protective glass or other personal protection.
Okay, again, we're back to industry standards. How does he know that? And why does it require Mr. Baldwin to ensure any crew in a line of fire? Is that because any actor needs to ensure that? Or is that because Mr. Baldwin is the producer and the producer is responsible for enforcing that? That's unclear. I don't know. I would ask, but we'll never know.
Protective equipment. Industry standards required remote operation of the camera if Mr. Baldwin ever aimed the gun at the camera.
Well, if industry standards require that, did they have the ability to do remote on scene? Maybe they were cutting corners. Maybe that machine's expensive. That's going to be good for the civil case. I don't know about the criminal case. But for the civil case, the reason we didn't do the remote is we didn't have the thing there. Why didn't you have it there? Because it costs $50,000. And to ship it there was another $12,000. And it's just too expensive. And we weren't really planning on it. And this was an isolated incident. I love that term, isolated incident. Cops use that all the time when they kill people. Isolated incident. Okay, so this is a good definition. This will absolutely, if I was charging him criminally, I would use this slide. If I was doing a search warrant or anything, I would use this slide. This is what they're supposed to look at. See, the problem is they didn't control the gun or the bullets very well at the crime scene. And I am still not convinced that there weren't other live rounds in the gun and that there weren't other live rounds on the cart, or there weren't live rounds on that motorcycle that one dude was wandering around a freaking crime scene loading up a bag and leaving shit. What the hell? Where did all the live rounds, and what are the odds of one live round ending up on this set and one live round ending up in this gun and one live round ending up in the exact position when he cocks the gun and it fires? Those odds start getting bigger and bigger. So we don't know any of this, but anyway, this is a good deal. This is a drilled hole, and I think he goes into the so by looking at a gun, at a bullet, you can tell this is a fake round. It's got a hole in the side. This gun doesn't. If there's any bullets with no drilled hole, and we know it's not a blank round or a dummy round, okay? Now we're showing the primer, no primer. So when you look at a dummy round, there's no primer, and there's a hole, and there's a BB. We've done a lot of things, and I say we, meaning the industry, has done a lot of things, so there's very easy to identify the difference between a dummy round and a live round. A dummy round has a hole in the side, and it has a hole in the back, and it's got a BB inside that you can rattle. We've done everything. If it was up to me, I'd put a red line around all the dummy rounds. I would put a red circle paint line right around here. Because when a bullet's loaded, you can't see that red line. It's in the gun. There's no way you're going to see it. So just like you can't see the hole. So if you got a hole, why not put a red and a yellow marker on here, or orange and red and yellow? 3 bright colors on the side to make it more easily distinguished. That's the round. So when I see a bullet with orange and yellow things on it, and then I see a bullet with no color, no hole, it's a lot easier for the mind to pick up, even in a glance. That round looks different. If all the rounds look the same, this round looks different. That's what your goal is here. Primer intact, no primer, got it. Another hole, easy to see at different angles.
When you shake a dummy round, you hear a BB rattle. When you shake a live bullet, you do not hear anything.
So no round should be used if you can't hear it. How hard is it to load a round and go tink, tink, tink? And when you stick it in, you see a big hole in the back. How hard is that? Obviously, it was too hard for their expert armor who was hired by Daddy with purple hair. It almost seems that it was so hard to get a live round in here, it's hard to believe it wasn't intentional. And if it was intentional, then somebody needs to be charged criminally. See, everybody wants to go on this. It was an accident. A live round accidentally got there. Somebody accidentally picked it up. Somebody accidentally dropped it off. The armorer was incompetent and she had live rounds mixed with dummies. It was an accident. Nobody intended to put a bullet in a gun and get somebody killed. That's an awful lot of freaking accident. It's hard to believe that. And if you don't believe it was an accident, then it was intentional, which means somebody needs to be criminally charged. And the investigation they're doing is so sloppy and freaking fly-by-night. I mean, I think the only one with worst procedures and behavior is the police department. They're the only thing worse than Hollywood because it's government and they don't care either and they can't be sued and they got money and they don't care and they don't have to follow the rules. That's why it's so important to hold government accountable.
So I take the
Okay, so this is important that he gave this interview and he says this. And remember, I went through this already. I did a video on it.
gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger.
I started to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger.
I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
Okay, so you notice his finger was like this off the trigger the entire time. I have not seen on any video of him handling a gun where his finger was not on the trigger. Not one. In this demonstration, his finger ain't on the trigger. I thought I saw him squeeze in the original video, and they didn't put that there.
So I take the gun and I start to cock the
Notice the trigger finger is off the trigger. Not in one other video do I see his finger off the trigger.
gun. I'm not going to pull the
Right there. I'm not going to pull the trigger. See that hand? See that that three fingers grip? He grips his whole hand. When he's got his gun in his hand and his fingers in there, and he does this gripping action, that's how you get an accidental discharge or negligent discharge, and that's what happened.
trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun.
Notice in their demonstration, they even show his finger off the trigger. I've never seen him do this. Every video I have of him holding his gun, his finger's in the trigger while his finger's on the trigger.
Just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
The reason the gun went off when he let go of the hammer is because his finger was in the trigger guard and he was applying finger pressure to the trigger. And when those guns, as long as their triggers for us, I can pull that hammer back 6 times and it'll fire. Bang, bang. That's how they fan guns. You hold the trigger back and you fan it. Bang, 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 bang. Because all you're doing is working a hammer. And because the trigger's back, the hammer never locks back. So he describes that he didn't pull the trigger, but he did. I mean, there's no other way. Unless when they inspect the gun, they find that it's faulty and it doesn't stay back. I find that hard to believe because in other videos, I see him cocking a gun and he has to decock it. I hear the click and I hear it lock back. So if he's saying it was faulty and that's why it went off, I don't buy that because there's too many other videos that I've seen to where it locks back.
I let go of the hammer of the gun goes off.
I think they show what an independent expert said happened. So this is Steve Wolf. Evidently, he's a firearms guy. I don't know why he's a firearms guy. Maybe these are all his movies that he's worked for. These are all the places, special effects hosting. I don't know what the hell it is.
There's definitely 2 deliberate acts that were required there. He had to cock the gun and he had to press the trigger.
That's how these guns work. You have to do that. Unless you hold the trigger back when you cock it, then you don't.
If he had his finger on the trigger, here and he's pressing it, he may not be aware that he's pressed the trigger. Then he pulls the hammer back.
Right.
And then he releases it, and then the gun fires.
That's what I think happened. This is a good little demonstration, good thing. As a criminal guy, I would love to use this. I'd be like, dude, man, you did a lot of work for me. I'm going to use this. I'm going to add a couple of arrows. This is perfect. I'm going to use this video on my case. This is a pretty good demonstration to where it shows. Right here, I think they kind of lose it. They should have, I think, showed it going in here because it went in. And then they kind of switch. Right here, the bullet looks front, so they kind of screwed up here. It should show the path here. But now they kind of clean it up, and it comes in here, goes in right behind her right breast, under her armpit. Right here, I kind of lose it. I would like to see a straight line of the bullet, and you can kind of guess if it went in here where it comes out where the straight line is. So the straight line is kind of here, which means Alec is over here. So, and then they show it going into him, hitting him in the upper shoulder area. So, for a bullet to go complete through her and into him and not be a live round and just be a half load, quarter load, accident, everything to me is leading it was a live round. I just can't imagine a non-factory live round load would do this. I could be wrong, though. I don't know. I haven't proved it. What the hell is a gaffer? Anybody know? If this was my case, I'd know. Where the hell is the assistant director? Where is the dude that freaking gave Alex the gun? Where is he? Bloodstain for dramatic effect. Okay, whatever. Freaking lawyer tricks. And this is the end of the video where it shows Mr. Baldwin, Rust Production, disregard at least 15 industry standards. I want to know how all these are the industry standard, because you're saying it is. Doesn't make it so. Failed to use a regular rubber gun. Was he required? I don't know. Failed to treat the gun at all times loaded. That's a basic standard protocol that any gun person, that's a rule that we always treat. Is it a rule for actors who are using rubber guns? I mean, do you treat a rubber gun as if it's loaded? No. They're going to say, but he didn't have a rubber gun. I understand that. But because he uses rubber guns and he doesn't always treat them as loaded, is it reasonable to hold him to the same standard that everyone else that only uses real guns follow? Failed to refrain from pointing firearm at anybody was part of the thing. Maybe he wasn't trying to point at them. Maybe because he didn't get the drawing procedures, the draw put it wrong. Maybe he thought he was aiming at the camera and he aimed at them. Whatever. Failed to treat the gun as an impulse firearm pointed could be destroyed. Failed to keep his finger off the trigger. If the scene called for his finger on the trigger, you can't say he failed to keep his finger off trigger. We don't know if he called for it or not. Again, I don't have audio of what she told him. In his interview, he says, she told me, do you want me to cock it? Do you want to see? Is this the way it's going? If you're cocking a gun and these type of handguns for the effect of a Western movie, the finger is always on the trigger. On a single action gun, this finger off the trigger has been a relatively new thing compared to the 1800s when firearms or revolvers single actions were around. So 1900, whatever it was, whatever. The finger off the trigger. I've got pictures of cops on my website, thinklikeacop.org, of a cop after he killed a person. He's standing in a crime scene. The person is dead and his finger is still on the trigger. Thinklikeacop.org. You can go see the picture. He's a cop on duty. His finger's got a revolver, and his finger is still on the trigger. After the guy's dead, and he's standing there, still shot. Guns pointed at the ground, and he didn't remove his finger. Finger off the trigger was a relatively new kind of thing, maybe in the 70s, maybe in the late 60s, to where we kind of figured out inter-limb interaction. When I grab somebody and squeeze, it's natural for the other hand to do it. Both limbs do the same. We get inter-limb interaction, and that's what causes accidental discharge. My finger's on the trigger. I grab you, bang! Because I'm squeezing here, and this caused the gun to go off. That's kind of when we started saying we need to start teaching finger off the trigger. Again, not saying who's right or wrong. I'm just kind of giving you, failed to operate the camera remotely. Okay, I'm pretty sure that happened. We know it wasn't a remote camera. Failed to provide adequate personal gear. Okay, failed to keep personnel safe on a set. We've had three with this one, 3 accidental discharges and 1 explosive discharge, all under the control of the armorer who has purple hair and who has dad that's been a really good guy all his life. Failed to accept a revolver directly in the presence of the armorer, if that's the standard. Failed to thoroughly brief the cast and crew of safety meetings. Okay. Failed to train all the cast members on safe handling. Maybe. Failed to have only qualified personnel inspect the weapon. Maybe. We still don't know if assistant director is qualified or not. Failed to personally perform. We don't know if he's required to do that, or if it's just a standard, or if he should, or if some do and some don't. Failed to thoroughly check all firearms that are in use. We don't know if he's required to check every firearm before use. Failed to ensure control and distribution of firearms. So this case is basically focusing on Alec Baldwin as the bad guy. There's multiple bad guys and multiple negligence to go around. The armor was negligent. Her training was negligent. Her hiring was negligent. The whole staff was negligent. The who had access to guns and ammo was negligent. They weren't locked up. People were bringing in. She was getting guns. The assistant director was getting guns or ammo from another guy. Another guy on set was giving them ammo. There's a whole bunch of negligence to go around. This is basically focused on Alex, the bad guy. He did it. He's got the most money. That's who we want to pay. Okay, I thought this was a good little movie to go over. I know I've been beating this dead horse on this Baldwin, but it's a pretty interesting case, and it kind of sucks that nobody's going to be charged criminally. I personally think there is criminal negligence in here, and there's multiple parties that committed criminal negligence. I don't think they're going to be able to prove that, and I don't think the DA will charge because he's got shitty investigators that put together a shitty case, and there's no way he's going to take a case that he knows he's going to lose in front of a jury, and he doesn't want to piss off Hollywood and charge Alec Baldwin and charge these people with a lot of money that can get a lot of defense attorneys to defend them, which is going to cost a lot of money, which I kind of agree with him. Why waste taxpayers' money on a losing thing? My problem is taxpayer money is being wasted by having all these incompetent freaking idiots doing this investigation, so now somebody gets away with murder or homicide or negligent homicide, and you can't charge them because of the gross negligence of government and law enforcement as a whole. That's my issue. You can hate me if you want. We'll end that there. Y'all have a good one.